Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So if you notice on my channel, I'm not always really into speculation. I don't like to talk a lot about the Bitcoin price. I don't like to have thumbnails where I've got a soy jack face and I'm going on about how there's like the Bitcoin price is going to become like $1 million and how everyone's going to be rich. I like to focus on the utility of cryptocurrency because in my opinion, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular wasn't intended to be a vehicle of speculation. It's there to actually enrich your life and ideally debank, which is what my channel is about. I'm Debank Dave and this is what I'm happy to teach you about. However, there are times that are very unique opportunities that don't really come about a lot. Now, some people will devote their entire channels just to go on about how Bitcoin will be $1 million. That's not my channel. However, there are times that I think are very unique in Bitcoin's history in its 4-year cycles where there's a time where if you don't get in now, it's very unlikely to come back to that point. And I feel a bit of a responsibility to tell you about what's going on because I'm not going to be making videos like this all the time. But I want to tell you that some things have changed in a really big way. And this is coming from someone who's been in this for a long time. Maybe he's not as long as others, but I've been around since 2017. And I've watched cryptocurrency climb out of the primordial stew where mostly the people that are into it were retail investors and people that, or we'll just say like they were ideologically and politically on the fringes, and watching them slowly infect the minds of the masses and work its way up from lower level politicians to higher level politicians to lower level countries to higher level countries, and now we've got a presidential candidate advocating for Bitcoin on a very high level. And it's not just Trump. There are a number of very high level politicians who are coming up politically that are going to do some very big things for Bitcoin. And there's no better place to start with this video than to talk about what's happened with Trump. Now, I was making videos recently about the importance of Trump's attending the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, and I was talking about the speculation about how he might make Bitcoin a reserve asset. Now, I was coming from the perspective that it was incredibly unlikely for him to actually do it, but the simple fact that he was attending and talking about Bitcoin at all, to me that was big enough, right? Like I'll never forget in 2021 when Elon Musk just simply mentioned Bitcoin, people just started buying, and I thought it would have that kind of similar of a network effect. People would just hear Trump talking about it and just another high level person that's advocated for it, and that would be enough to get prices going. The speculation as to whether or not he would make it a reserve asset. Look, I love my conspiracy theories, but to me this sounded like almost like a Q level conspiracy. Like it was just like it sounded so absurd that I didn't really want to go out and attack it because you never know about these things. But deep down I'm like, nah, this is BS. There's no way he's going to do it. After all, I couldn't really get to the bottom of where this rumor came from. People just started talking about it on Twitter. But I couldn't really get to the source of why exactly Trump would do it. But I did watch the conference closely, and lo and behold, the madman actually did it. This is, let's say, Trump backs U.S. Bitcoin reserve and says Democrat will be disaster for crypto. Forget the second part. I don't know about that. It's just whatever. But he really did say that, and let me show you, for those that haven't seen the clip, you need to actually see this. Now, he kind of talks a little bit in code first, but you'll see where this is going. I need to play the full clip.
That the United States government is among the largest holders of Bitcoin. Does anyone know that?
200,000 seized by
How
the
about
Justice
that?
Department.
The federal government is almost 210,000 Bitcoin, or 1% of the total supply that will ever exist. But for too long, our government has violated the cardinal rule that every Bitcoiner knows by heart. Never sell your Bitcoin.
So at first, I'm just thinking they don't plan on selling their Bitcoin, which is a pretty big deal because they're one of the largest Bitcoin holders in the world. Him just saying they're not going to sell their Bitcoin is
how did I figure that one?
A big deal.
Never sell your Bitcoin. And so, as the final part of my plan today, I am announcing that if I am elected, it will be the policy of my administration, United States of America, to keep 100% of all the Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds
When I
or
first heard
acquires
this, to me
into the
this was
future. We'll keep
big enough
100%.
by itself.
I hope you do
just
well,
the fact that it
please.
wasn't going to sell. And you
This
never
will
know,
serve in
after 4
effect
years,
as the core
maybe it
of the
changes. But
strategic
that alone,
national Bitcoin stockpile. As you know,
wow, right? This is unbelievable. I don't know. I mean, maybe if you're newer to Bitcoin, I don't know. Like maybe it doesn't seem like as a big deal. I don't know how to emphasize it enough because there's a buildup of emotions that I've been having in regards to Bitcoin since 2017, where I remember just how in the dark it was, for the average person, institutions. I mean, it was something that was just so in the fringes. The idea that this is happening, it's almost like a dream. It's almost impossible to believe that this is the case. Now, let's actually just talk about the actual ramifications of this, right? Okay, so first, let's just listen on. So first, the fact that it's just endorsed by Bitcoin. Endorsed by Donald Trump, right? Who at this stage is probably one of the most famous people to exist in the past 50 years, bare minimum. Who knows how he's going to be considered in the future, but he's bare minimum going to be considered maybe one of the most historical presidents ever to exist, right? I don't know if that, putting his face on Mount Rushmore, I wouldn't go that far, but let's just be real as far as infamy or fame, whatever it is, he's one of the most famous people ever to exist, right? One of the most largest political movements ever. Like the MAGA movement is huge. Now to have the person possibly going to be in the highest office in the land to be advocating for Bitcoin, where there was no such precedent before this, there was no other president or presidential candidate even coming close to talking about stuff like this. For him to advocate it, that alone is a vote of confidence, the kind that will get a lot of people on board. And in regards to world leaders, the US paves the way in a lot of respects. A lot of world leaders will just have an excuse now to do what maybe they already felt like doing in the first place. But the fact that the US has done it, other countries are very likely to do the same thing. And they've got most countries have a identical setup to the United States, where countries are the largest holder of Bitcoin. I mean, like the government, ultimately, because anytime there's a drug bust, gangs are shut down and funds are seized. Ultimately, those funds frequently, especially nowadays, are seized in the form of Bitcoin, possibly Monero, who knows what other stuff, USDT, of course cash. But it's the 2020s, it's modern day and age. That's not, criminals don't necessarily stash all their money in a mattress anymore. If anything, they can just go and take their cash and just buy Bitcoin, right? And it's a lot safer. No one can take it from them. So the government has been able, of many countries, has been able to seize all of these funds. And now they all have an excuse to actually utilize this money. Many of them may start enacting similar policies simply because the US has done it. Or they may go as far as to actually use it. And if they're going to use it, they have to create laws around the legality of Bitcoin, which will make it easier for them to acquire in the future. And it really just opens the door in ways we've never seen before. So El Salvador is the one that started it. However, it was a real surprise that we went from, the bottom of the barrel in terms of countries to the very top within the space of one Bitcoin cycle. Going from like a third world country immediately to a first world country. Like we skipped over all of we didn't go from El Salvador to Honduras to Guatemala to Africa or something like that. We went straight from El Salvador to United States, and then from United States, it's just going to trickle down everywhere else. So that's the first biggest reason. It's just a vote of confidence. Now, the second thing that I talked about in a previous video is that if all these other countries are going to start having an excuse to do it, how's this going to affect their financial policy? Well, just an idea that I've had is that when countries start to make Bitcoin a policy, if they're already working in this useless currency, that's fiat currency, right? It's backed by nothing. It constantly inflates. When is it going to be the policy for countries to just start literally printing their own cash to buy Bitcoin? Because, and obviously this is an act of corruption. This is not a good thing. This is not a good thing for the citizens. Ultimately, it is absolute theft from the citizens to the government. But the government's already doing that anyway by printing cash to begin with. They print cash ultimately to buy stuff, pay for goods and services, pay for their bureaucracy. But ultimately, they are stealing funds already from the citizens. So what's stopping them from doing the same thing, but putting it into Bitcoin? After all, if a lot of them are going to be not as really deeply understood about Bitcoin, so the chances are that they're going to see a quick buck around the sidelines, and they see, look, this currency is already not worth much. Maybe we could just print off cash and buy Bitcoin, and ultimately, if it's on the balance sheet, then it won't really seem like anything bad's happening. And frankly, if they really do keep it on the balance sheet and they use it as a strategic reserve asset, then it'll actually probably bring them a lot of stability as well. So there's dark ways of doing it and good ways of doing it. But regardless, I think that is something that will increasingly be on the cards. Many governments may just start to see it as good investment. And they're just really following the timeline that a lot of institutions have gone down, where originally Bitcoin was purely for the retail plebeians. And then over time, it slowly worked its way up into institutions. And frankly, the Bitcoin bull run we've seen and the latest all-time high we've seen was purely driven by institutions. Retail had almost nothing to do with the massive volume and inflows that we've seen into Bitcoin recently. It's all institutions. And institutions, they started by, it was just smaller institutions and bigger institutions. They were putting little bits in, now they're putting a lot in. And yeah, I think governments are ultimately following the same way. Now, I believed that institutional investing would be the primary catalyst for the Bitcoin bull run in 2025. Now, of course, there's big supply and demand factors. We did have the halvening. That ultimately will be the biggest determinant of why Bitcoin's going to go up. It's cyclical. But however, I did believe that institutions would be the biggest inflows into crypto. I think that'll still be the case, but generally, I'm wondering how much governments are going to be responsible for these inflows next year. We've got a whole year of Trump. If Trump does become president, we've got a whole year of Trump being president while we are in a big face melting bull run. And next year will be the golden bull run. After that, bear market. It's all cyclical. I don't need to be Nostradamus to know it. You can just look at the chart. Everything comes in these 4-year cycles, and next year will basically be summer in the Bitcoin cycle, right? And we've got a full year of a lot of policy changes, not just in the US, but all around the world. So I can't emphasize how much of a big deal this is. And again, I don't like talking about price speculation, but one thing that it's interesting for me, when I've had friends ask me about Bitcoin and whether they should buy in the past few months, compared to say in previous years, right? Previous years, someone could very easily own one Bitcoin, and it could, they could actually become quite wealthy just from buying a couple of $1,000s worth, right? I'm of the opinion now, I was recently of the opinion that everyone should own Bitcoin, but at the same time, the price of Bitcoin's gone up so much that you can't really get these parabolic 10x's or anything like that. The last bull cycle, Bitcoin only went up 3x from its previous all-time high, where before that it was over 20x its all-time high, and before that it was 50x. So I thought, it's going down and down and down. And, the idea of Bitcoin, getting to $1 million or 10xing is, it felt out of reach, and it didn't feel right for me to sell people on a dream. For me, I was just, when I advocate for Bitcoin, I'm like, it's good, it's better than the S&P 500, you'll beat inflation, you probably will make a bit of money, but don't expect yourself to be a millionaire. And I still don't like to talk like that. I don't like talking like a moon boy. I don't want to tell people who are watching this video that Bitcoin is going to make you a millionaire unless you've already got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth. That being said, it's just occurred to me, in the past few weeks, that it is entirely possible to see Bitcoin one day potentially get a $10 trillion market cap. Now, that might sound really obvious, and that might not sound groundbreaking at all. And over a given time frame, I'm sure that is as clear as the sun is yellow the ocean is blue. Obviously, it could get to $1 million at some stage, right? But when I think about the market cap, I'm like, 1.3 trillion, like this, if this moves up to 10 trillion market cap one day, right, and gets to around 700K, that would take a huge amount of time. The entire world would have to completely change. And, I couldn't see it, but the reason why I was closed in on my thinking is because I was still thinking as Bitcoin as a retail-driven market, and I haven't really updated my mental software to take into account that actually crypto has evolved well beyond retail, and it's now institutions that are driving the price. And then we are on the cusp of it being a government potentially driven thing, where we might get into scenarios like what I talked about before, where governments may just start printing money to buy Bitcoin. When you consider the market cap of Bitcoin, it sounds like a lot now, like 1 trillion, right? But that's just kind of a mental block we have, There was a time when Bitcoin was $1 billion, and it was impossible to imagine that it would be $10 billion, right? When it got to there, it sounded already pretty big. It was impossible to imagine being 100 billion, right? Then it was impossible to imagine being 1 trillion, right? And as we continue to move up these levels from retail to institution to government, it's entirely reasonable and possible that the market cap of Bitcoin could be 10 trillion. Now, it's not that this could happen. Obviously, this could happen, but it's more about, like, I realize that the timeline is being condensed significantly because of this most recent announcement, because now Bitcoin has got such a high level advocacy. It's actually going to be implemented as a strategic asset. The idea that it could pump up to $10 trillion by this cycle, it's not outlandish anymore. I'll be honest, like, just for reference, I honestly thought Bitcoin could get to 150K, 200K. Then we'll go into a bear cycle for another year or two. It might go down all the way to, 80, 90K again, and the cycle will repeat and go up. I'm not saying that won't happen. Like, I'm all for betting on worst case scenarios when it comes to price, because I'm someone that just, like, I don't like to be a moon boy. I like to focus on business. I like to focus on the utility of cryptocurrency. I don't like to get people's hopes up, because actually that's when they're most likely to act irrationally. But at the same time, I think I need to be completely honest. I think there's a real case for Bitcoin getting to 500K by the end of next year, or, like, wildly, it could actually even get to $1 million. Now, I think the majority of the price spike will in fact be speculation, but the underlying fundamentals will in fact be, that alone will actually get Bitcoin to increase massively. Institutions, government spending, and then eventually retail will start picking up and it massively inflate the price. Who knows what it could be by the end of next year. Now, I just wanted to quickly get into a little bit more other news about this stuff. Who was it that I wanted to talk about? Marathon Digital buys $100 million of Bitcoin. This is another, it's a sign of the moving times. Marathon Digital is a Bitcoin mining company. Now, Bitcoin miners are the ones usually for putting the supply on the OTC and spot exchange market, right? Because they need to pay for their expenses, they need to pay for electricity, they're a business. They're the ones that are always the ones that dumping Bitcoin on the exchanges, ultimately lowering the price, because they're the source of inflation in the market. So when you've got like a Bitcoin mining company that has not only decided to stop selling Bitcoin, but also to hold all the Bitcoin that they're mining, right? I didn't mention that, but they're actually not selling. They've decided to stop selling Bitcoin, right? Even if it's coming out of their own expenses, right? So they're probably going into debt to pay for electricity, pay for workers, pay for hardware, etc., just so they could hold on to their Bitcoin. And they've even gone a step further, buying Bitcoin, most likely OTC from other miners. And I'm wondering, like, what's going to happen when even miners, they're not selling and they start buying even? I mean, where is all this extra supply of Bitcoin going to come from? If all the miners aren't even selling, where is that free floating Bitcoin going to come from? Like, there's only so much that's going to be left on the OTC desks and on spot, right? At some stage, there could be the supply shock could be absolutely unbelievable. Then we've got some with some other institutions. Semler Scientific now holds a total of 828 Bitcoin. Doesn't sound like huge news compared to the other things that I've talked about, but Semler Scientific is not necessarily a finance company. I mean, they deal in like pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. It's just a normal company. Obviously they've got a lot of money on their balance sheet. They want to invest it, but they're even just regular companies with a lot of money are just investing in Bitcoin. Next one, here we go. Check this one out. Mayor Steve Fulop of New Jersey, adding Bitcoin ETFs to New Jersey City Pension Fund. So, I mean, it's getting adoption on the highest levels. Like the idea that now these, Bitcoin ETFs are going to, be added to pension fund portfolios. I mean, the amount of development that I've seen in the past couple of weeks, frankly, is it's mind-bending. And by the way, this is the Trump effect, because a lot of people, politicians, whether it's at the council level, state level, or whatever, are very pro-Trump, and they're going to follow him with what he's doing. So simply the advocacy of Bitcoin by Trump is going to motivate a lot of these city mayors, state politicians to start enacting pro-Bitcoin laws, or they're going to be encouraged to get more involved. And this is the start of many things. Like, I'm sure I'll be reading news like this throughout the next year and a half. It's going to be absolutely wild. I also wanted to show you like the list of pro-crypto politicians versus ones that are against it. And I knew there were a lot now, but I had no idea that it was this many now. Look at this: strongly supportive, strongly supportive, strongly supportive, strongly supportive, strongly supportive. There's 11 pages of this stuff. 11 pages. Now, of course, there are some that are not supportive. I want to get into those in a sec. But again, it's wild. There was not a single one. What is it now? 7 years ago, there was hardly any, right? Even Ron Paul, I think, wasn't even into Bitcoin. I mean, he's into gold, but I mean, it's wild to think that. And what's really interesting, I want to bring this to our attention. If I go to anti-crypto politicians, we've got Joe Biden, number one. Now, all of these are basically Democrats, or a few Republicans, but basically all the anti-crypto politicians are Democrats. Now, I didn't know this. I didn't know this. Now, of course, like, there are so many pro-crypto politicians that are Democrats as well. So you can see, there's just so many Republicans, you can't see as many Democrats, but there are, in fact, a lot of Democrats that support cryptocurrency. But when you consider the fact that most of the anti-crypto people, and by the way, when I say anti or pro-crypto, these are referring to people that have made statements about it. So this isn't like guesses, right? So all the people that haven't made a statement about it, they're not going to appear on this list, right? So only the people that have made a specific statement about cryptocurrency are on this list. And all the ones that are strongly against cryptocurrency or just against cryptocurrency are Democrats. And we all know what's likely to happen next year. There's a very good chance that crypto is not going to be crypto is what am I saying? I'm getting distracted. It's very likely that the Democrats are going to be out next year, and it's going to be the Republicans that are going to be in. So if I go back and I show you the pro crypto politicians, almost all of them are Republican, obviously including Trump. So this could be a pro crypto administration. And this is very, very likely to, it's not just a vote of approval, like I said, it's like all these people, if given the green light, will start enacting pro-crypto measures that's going to involve them maybe buying crypto for to put on their balance sheet, to store maybe funds from their treasury. Maybe it's like they put it, into a pension fund. Maybe they just generally advocate for it. The absolute last thing I want to talk about, which is no joke as well, maybe I should have brought this up more at the beginning. RFK Jr. says he'd make the government buy $615 billion in Bitcoin. That's if he's elected. And, RFK Jr., unlike Trump, unlike Biden, and many of these other really old politicians, he's a relatively young man. I think he's only 65 years old. He is, in fact, presidential material. And really, so Biden's dropped down. The Democrats really don't have any other solid candidate. They're going with Kamala Harris right now. I think she's just going to be a blip on the radar. She's not going to be around for long. Once she's out from this election, once she loses, which I'm honestly guessing is the most likely scenario, she's going to disappear. And the Democrats really don't have anyone. RFK Jr. is the second highest polling presidential candidate in America. Now, I think since Kamala was endorsed by Obama and the Clintons and whatever, actually maybe he didn't, but I'm sure it's maybe a little bit different right now. But generally speaking, I think he is like the second most popular presidential candidate in general, and he's probably the strongest actual Democrat out of all of them at this stage. Although I know he's running independent, I know the party doesn't like him, but I think the Democrat Party are in shambles, and I think it's quite possible that RFK Jr. could be the one to sew them back together. We'll see if he jumps back into the party, but I think there's a real possibility that one day this person could be president. I don't know if it's 4 years, I don't know if it's 8 years from now, but I think that's likely he's going to keep trying, and he's also just very influential in general in politics. So the idea that he would do this is really wild. Now, the reason why he picked 615 billion as the number is because he wants it to match the amount of gold that the U.S. government owns. So U.S. government is the world's largest owner of gold, boasting 8,000 tons of the precious metal. At current prices, that's 615 billion worth of gold. Matching that value in Bitcoin would require a whopping 9.4 million BTC at a current price, or nearly 45% of the total supply that will ever be mined. Now, that's crazy, and I don't think they'll actually get 45% of the Bitcoin ever mined. Because there's slippage, the price will increase. They'll spend huge amounts of money, waste huge amounts of money on the spread. That's a really wild thing, and I think this is definitely not something to sleep on. It's just that there's so many other things going on. It's hard to emphasize, focus on just this point, even though it is a really big deal. So that's it, guys. I have no other thing to say besides you need to buy Bitcoin. This is really your last chance to buy Bitcoin. Frankly, this is one of the most dangerous bull runs, because most people are, especially young people, they're not going to have the funds to be able to buy one Bitcoin, and very soon, once at 2 or 3x's, owning one full Bitcoin is going to be out of reach for the average person. So this is really the last time to be able to buy Bitcoin. The reason why I say it's going to be dangerous as well, because a lot of these people end up going straight headfirst into shitcoins and getting wrecked, which is a very sad thing for me. So really, this is really it. You're going to see the price go up 6 months from now. It's going to be an absolute wild ride, but by then it's not really going to be as worth it, because who knows how high Bitcoin is going to be. So thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. If you're interested in buying Bitcoin without KYC, I suggest use my referral link in the description down below for local CoinSwap and HODL. So this is a great place where you can buy Bitcoin. It's one of the only places where you can do so without using KYC, which is something that's really epidemic in our community. It's something that de-anonymizes your crypto. Every time you use KYC to sign up with Binance or Bybit, it's if there's ever a data breach, or if the government decides they want that information, they can just get it like that. They'll know exactly what crypto addresses you use, and ultimately it's going to make it so Bitcoin isn't even that anonymous. So I want you to use local CoinSwap or HODL if you buy Bitcoin. You can find that it might be a little bit more expensive. It can be, let me show you, it's a little bit above market rate, which is not ideal, but you can find some pretty good deals on here. And ultimately, when you sign up to this website, you don't have to you can use a burner email address. You don't have to give your phone number. You don't have to put in your address. No driver's license, passport, anything like that. You'd have to give your name. And then when you open a trade with one of these sellers, they're not going to ask you the same thing. So you can do so without KYC. And another thing that's really good as well is you can use any payment method that you like. There's like, when you trading crypto via P2P, which is my favorite way of buying crypto, you look at all these different payment methods you can use. Like if you're using Binance, you've got bank transfer pay, maybe Apple Pay, and that's it. Like most of these payment methods I've never heard of. But you can, I mean, look at this. You could buy Bitcoin with a Walmart gift card. You can buy it with Vodafone Cash in Egypt, right? You can buy it with a Steam gift card code. And if you look at all these different offers, because they're much above the market rate, you might say, well, look, I'm not interested in buying Bitcoin. However, you can go the reverse way. If you see that people are selling Bitcoin via bank transfer in the United Kingdom for 6%, it's like, well, if they can do it, you can do it. So if you want a way of making money by selling cryptocurrency, make sure to use my referral link in the description down below. Register for local coin swap, register for HODL, and you can become a seller of Bitcoin. And ultimately, you're helping people in the community because you're helping them acquire Bitcoin without KYC. And everyone's happy. You're not involved in shitcoins, you're not involved in gambling. You're providing an honest service that's actually going to be of benefit to other people. So make sure to use my referral link in the description down below. And make sure to subscribe if you want more updates about how to debank, how to get the most out of cryptocurrency, and how to do P2P trading. And I'll see you next time.